Good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our session, The DNA of Knowledge Markets, Data, Networks, and most importantly, Access. My name is Rima Najjar. I am a business presenter working with Al-Sharq News by Bloomberg. We are living in an era where knowledge has become the most valuable currency, shaped by digital networks and accelerated by AI and robotics, and distributed through systems that increasingly determine who gets access, who participates, and who benefits. Today, our goal is to unpack how these knowledge markets are formed, who they serve, and what structures ensure they remain equitable, innovative, and connected. We welcome our esteemed panelists, and let's begin our conversation. The session will cover three main themes. First of all, digital networks and data access, AI, robotics, and human-machine knowledge networks, and thirdly, data equity, AI governance, and research-driven knowledge markets. I would like for each of the panelists to shed light on this topic according to his or her field and perspective. I would like for Mr. Harrison Long to start the conversation because without digital networks, we don't have knowledge economies. Firstly, how is E&D investing in intelligent networks that don't just move data, but enable better access, collaboration, and decision-making across the region?
First of all, thank you, Rima, for the introduction, and really great to be on stage with a number of esteemed colleagues and panelists. For EN, we devised our strategy back in 2022. And during that time is what we call the 4D strategy, where each D stands for something. We range from delivering the core, because at the end of the day, we're a telecom operator, both here in the UAE as well as in the region. So we really want to excel in that. To diversifying our business into the technology areas as well as geographically. The third D is digitizing and transforming operations, which is where a lot of the topics in automation and AI is touched upon. But lastly, but also I would say probably most importantly, is to deliver things sustainably. And we look at sustainability in a very broad way across the environment, and we're one of the partners at COP28 back in December 23 here in Dubai, to the social impact that we make in the communities that we operate and serve in, to, of course, the various governance and processes within our organization. But to your question, Rima, in terms of digital network, we look at access across the board. Many people see us as the core telecom operator in the digital infrastructure of here in the UAE, as well as many countries that we operate in, providing you mobile services, fixed network, and whatnot. And that has a lot of meaning in terms of access. That being said, that's not enough. Because you also need a number of other things to be on hand in order to make holistically accessibility work. They range from, number one, the devices, the handsets, the laptops of which you would access the internet with. It needs to be accessible and affordable. If you're selling, $2,000 iPhones, many people cannot afford that, regardless where here in the UAE or many other countries nearby. So we're actually working with a lot of different manufacturers and brands to provide much lower cost devices. We're talking about $50, $100, $200 in the respective markets in order for people to access the technology. The second is on the services side. For example, when you have your monthly telecom bill, many people complain, it's very expensive. We have a number of different initiatives in place to provide, for example, free rating on the data on certain apps, as well as certain educational platforms to provide upskilling and learning opportunities. There's also services and whatnot in other areas as well. So we actually look at it in a very holistic way, from infrastructure to the platform to all the way up to services and handset, to ensure that across the board, that accessibility is key, not just here in the UAE, but across all the markets that we operate in, from Saudi Arabia to Egypt to Morocco and even in Eastern Europe.
This is a very important point, and they touched upon it in the previous session, the access to internet and access to technology. You spoke about different initiatives E&, are doing, were and are still doing. You have an initiative with one of Amazon units, AWS. You have a few collaborations with the World Economic Forum, with UNDP. You see, as you mentioned, you operate in, other than the UAE, in 19 other countries. And there are always needs that need to be, or gaps that need to be filled. For example, Egypt, you have the age gap, you have the high unemployment rate. So can you tell us more about the initiatives E&, is doing and how to close this inequality?
For us, we look at it both from a top-down and bottom-up perspective. Top-down, as the Group Chief Strategy Officer of the conglomerate, it is really part and parcel of our overall group strategy by making a positive impact in the communities that we work with. That being said, the challenge is very different depending on the country and even sometimes the region that we're talking about. And I think, Rima, you mentioned some of it. And I'll highlight maybe a few very specific examples and initiatives with many partners that we operate in. For example, in Pakistan, of which we also have operations, we're having microfinance initiatives where we're utilizing our fintech platform to offer loans to those that are less fortunate. It could be entrepreneurs, SMEs, even women entrepreneurs. And the idea here is, in a country like Pakistan, access to credit, access to capital is not as high because there's no underlying credit risk modeling, right? So we're actually able to use our platform to provide these loans. And rightly, you mentioned Egypt as well, which is another situation. In Egypt, huge population. You talk about the employment gap and the skills gap. And that's actually where we partnered with both the UNDP as well as Coursera, one of the US leading or global leading educational platforms, in providing zero rating to many of the online platform training programs, where people on their mobile device or on the internet can access many of these upskilling programs for free, because the platform is free and now the service is free, in order to basically do the next generation skill training that, that they may be attracted to from their own personal and career development. And lastly, here in the UAE, we have a number of initiatives in place as well, ranging from our broader partnership with NAFIS on the Emirati programs, but even with AWS, we just recently launched an AI Nation training program to be held not just online, but physically in our own facility called EN Academy, where we'll provide 30,000 training vouchers for in-person training for many digital skill sets. And this would actually provide capability building and capacity building for both the white and the blue collar across a number of technology skill sets, such as data, AI, IoT, and cybersecurity. So as you can see, we have the top-down vision that we set at the group level, but every country, and I highlighted 3 examples in particular for you, where we do a very much of a bottom-up build, find local partners that share very similar traits, as well as strategies and visions, and really work with them to drive to execution.
Professor Hiroshi, you also found a gap in Japan, which is aging population and also shortage in labor. And you are known for developing the technology of avatars using AI and robotics. Tell us more about your journey. And as you told me earlier, your avatar is right now in the classroom teaching the students?
Yeah, actually the students are talking with my avatars right now.
Tell us more about this journey.
So may I use the slide?
Of course.
Right, so, okay.
Can we showcase the slides,
Right,
the PowerPoint presentation?
May I have a clicker?
It's over here.
Where is the clicker?
We need the control, right?
Yeah, he's running that. Okay, so my main work, my current main work is to develop the avatar. The avatar is, very close to the kind of a mobile phone, but this is a human-like mobile phones, right? So I believe, this kind of the new media is going to be very important in our futures. Anyway, so 2015, I got the knowledge award. This is my grade, was my grade honors. So that is the reason why I'm coming here today. And the one more thing, I was running the Osaka Kansai Expo as a producers. And then I have built my pavilions. Right, so my pavilion, the mission of my pavilion is to show our futures. What kind of the futures we're going to have with avatar technologies or some, there are many kind of intelligent devices. Right, so let me show you the my pavilions. Right, so my pavilion is covered by waters. Right, so this, this means the source of life. Right. I think I don't need the sound much, right? So, and then, the first, in the entrance, we are showing the history of human-like the robots and human-like stuff. And then, in the second floor, we are showing the what kind of futures we're going to have after 50 years, right?
What kind of society do you envision in 50 years, having avatars and robots?
And then, we have a more better the medical cares, and then we have the energy technologies like fusion technologies, right? So we can expect many kind of the advanced technologies, and then we can have a more better life. So we are showing that kind of a future life. In addition to that, I have prepared with some sort of it's artistic work. So what kind of a human we're going to have after 1,000 years? So this is a kind of assumptions, right? But I believe we may have this kind of futures, right? The future of humans. Anyway, so in order to run this pavilion, I was using the many avatars, avatar robots and computer graphics agents, right? So so what is the avatars, right? So avatars, we need the avatars of the more, so that we're going to have a serious problem of labor shortage in Japan, especially. Right, so how we can solve that problems? So that we need to use the robot technology and AI technologies, for realizing avatars. So what is avatars? Avatar is a robot with 3D characters, they operated by humans or humans' intentions. Right, so we need to have a direct operations. Probably we can just send our intention to the robot with 3D character, and then the robot and 3D character works for us. Right, so this is my avatars. That he is, working in my university right now instead of me. So therefore, I could come here, right? And then, he is reading almost all my books and the media interviews, and the plus he has a perfect knowledge from the internet because we are using the large language model, right? So anyway, so by using these technologies, we are trying to realize a society in which people are free from the constraint of body, brain, space, and time. So that means we provide the avatars for everybody in the near future. This project is called the Moonshot. This is the biggest R&D project in Japan. We have 10 goals. The first goal is our goals. So, and in 2050, right, we need to realize this kind of the society. So anyone, including the elderly and people with disabilities, will be able to freely participate in various activities with abilities beyond ordinary people while expanding our physical, the cognitive, and the perceptual abilities using a large number of avatars. Okay? So anyone will be able to work and studies anytime, anywhere, minimize commuting to work, and have plenty of free time. So we want to change the education, working environment, medical environment, and the everyday life. So in addition to this, the R&D project, I'm running my companies. So I'm trying to develop the avatar market with the computer graphics avatar first. And then we're going to replace the computer graphics avatars with the robots. Okay, so this is our product. Right? So Japanese companies like animation-like characters.
Professor, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
These avatars that we're seeing, how can they enhance knowledge creation? And what role do you see for humans in 50 years?
Right. So actually, avatar, we can combine the avatar technology with AI. right? So the AI can support the this operator's knowledge. Okay, so the operator can have a better services by using avatars. Okay, so let me show you a couple of very practical example. So this EC site is using our avatars, computer graphics avatars, and avatar is better than the human, the shopkeepers, all in some sense, right? And then we are also using the avatars for supporting the convenience stores, right? So, and the interesting things, in order to train the operators, we can use the AI technologies. We are simulating the customers by using AI, right? So this is the training, right? The first, the operators, talking to the AI, and then the AI give us some scores, right? So AI will evaluate the conversations, okay? And after that, the operator can talk with the real humans. So AI, to training us, and then we are using the AI functions of avatars and giving a much better services. So this kind of a technology will save our futures, especially in Japan. Okay, so and then of course we can realize the diversity and inclusion, because we don't need to worry about our bodies, right? So. Sorry that I'm talking a bit.
No. Let's move to, we can go back also to the PowerPoint presentation. Let's move to Daniela. Daniela, tell us more about this evolution of data, and especially for composite indicators. You have the expertise in measuring complex things and complex concepts like quality of life. I would like for you to explain to us, first of all, what are composite indicators? Because a few of us really understand this concept.
Okay. Is this working?
Should be.
Hello, everybody. Daniela.
It's not working. Can you show her how to...
And I have specialized in the construction of composite indicators. So we just had a session on the Global Knowledge Index. I collaborated in that, particularly in the ESG impact sub-pillar that will be presented tomorrow. But I've also worked in the ICT Development Index, in the Global Innovation Index, for Europe in the Skills Index, Transitions Performance, you name it. So that's sort of my niche expertise. And I want to quote Rebecca Greenspan from this morning, the Secretary General of UNESCO, when she said, "Markets need the visible hand of policy and the invisible hand of exchanges." I think that's really the business of composite indicators. What we try to achieve, following as well what you were saying about the top-down and the bottom-up approach, is that we have some sort of conceptual framework around a very multidimensional concept, say innovation, knowledge, competitiveness, and we need to sort of assess how countries are doing at that level. So that leads us to a bottom-up approach of actually finding the data, and that's our market. That's our knowledge market, the market for data. And the message we want to provide today is just to say that there has been a great evolution, not just in indices, since the very first one, the Human Development Index that was developed by UNDP, just like the GKI. There has been a great development because we're using now increasingly data, not only from national statistical offices, but we're using data as well from private companies. And I want to hear more about that from you, maybe. Hardware, software, you name it, but also from satellite imagery. And, at the beginning, there was some sort of technological challenge of how are we going to get the best data from different countries. And increasingly, what we see is that just a single company or a single institution, let's say, for example, for fires, we have NASA providing great information that is being used all over the world. It's global, it's free, and it's very high level. So the challenge for anybody working in an index is actually to find the best data. So that covers the data part. I move now to the networks part. What that means is that this is not just multidimensional, but it's also multidisciplinary and multi-stakeholder. And I think the big challenge of any index is to actually find the good mix of experts and policymakers and different stakeholders to actually agree on the conceptual framework that has to be real time. It has to be really in line with what is happening in the real world. And then we have the access problem, which is that some data is proprietary. Not all data is public. So how do you get access to that good data is often a big challenge. What I've seen is that usually we offer to just publish normalized information. As long as we get the raw data, it doesn't have to be published. So this is a call as well for anybody involved in the private sector that manages good data to find these sort of collaborations with people working on these indices, because what we need is this light that we're seeking to provide. So just the final word is that the bottom up is the data, the top down is the conceptual framework, but actually this is a collaboration between all sorts of stakeholders, and where we have this visible hand of policy very often following this invisible hand of exchanges.
And how does big data fit into all of this, specifically knowledge?
Yeah, well, big data has been something very special in this area, because there was a big promise some 10, 15 years ago that we would get very good data, particularly in terms of timeliness, because of this big data, all this generation of data. I think the promise has not delivered that much. It has in certain areas, like imagery, anything that has to do with sciences. The Global Common Stewardship Index, for example, is a very good example. We use that in the GKI. It's a mix of national statistics and scientific data. That has worked, but maybe it hasn't delivered that much on the social side. And I think that the big issue is completeness. We know that the data we get is not necessarily complete. Bias in, bias out. And actually, I'm curious as well to hear about how that works for the robotic part of this discussion.
I want to ask you about the avatars that the professor was talking about. Are they environmental friendly, in your opinion, the avatars and the
I don't
robots?
have an opinion on that. I don't know if they're environmental friendly. Well, my question is, why do we need, and this is a question that I actually got from Sylvain. He said, if I were there, this would be my question. Sylvain Coté, who worked as well on the GKI, he said, why do we need avatars? Why do we need robots looking like humans and not complementing humans? That's the question I have as well.
May I answer?
Of course.
You know, actually, well, especially for the handicapped people who are using wheelchairs, the avatar is very convenient for that, right? So, for example, in a convenience store, we are using the avatars, but operators, right? So, operator is handicapped people. We are hiring the handicapped operators there, right? So we can give a chance to work for the handicapped peoples, and then we don't need to have a commuting time, right? So in the Tokyo's, everybody is spending the 3 hours for commuting, right? The morning and in the evening, right? So and if we have avatars, we don't need to drive and we don't need to take the trains, right? So we can quickly have jobs, right?
Efficiency.
And then we can efficiencies, right? We can increase the efficiencies, right? And then, for example, that we can have jobs in these countries, but the other operators, but we can work in Tokyo, right? By using avatars, right? So that we can, develop a kind of an international labor market by using avatars.
Being in different places at the same time. That's a nice thing. Mr. Harrison Long, let's talk about the importance of public and private collaboration needed to close this data and skills gap more quickly.
I think not just in the skill gap, in general, it is very important for public and private partnerships to take into play. And I'll give you a few examples and reasons why that is. The first is in the core telecom network of which we build. There are certain instances when we expand into more rural areas or in a more low-income areas that from a pure financial or business casing perspective, it is almost, I wouldn't say almost, it is negative to build that network. However, given the population that lives in that particular geographical region, and the fact that nowadays, mobile technology and mobile phones is not a want, is a need, just like food and just like water, right? So as a publicly traded company, we also need to return to our shareholders. So in many cases, we actually work with other institutions, such as the World Bank, the IFC, EBRD, and others like that, to actually work together to build the last mile connectivity where otherwise it would not be possible. So that's just one example. Another one is in a forum like this, Knowledge Summit, co-hosted and organized by the UNDP, where organizations like us have been partnering with the UNDP and other parts of the UN as well, like the ITU, for many years. Because in addition to the pulse that we get in the market, there's a lot of work being done in organizations like this in rallying and working together collaboratively across the board, different entities. So today I met another operator in Vodafone, Ooredoo, and other nonprofit organizations. So the idea of not just working together, but also in policy setting, because we all, I think, see similar challenges, but the only way to really get to the same outcome and the outcome that we want is to work together to build that future. So just a few examples of why public and private partnership is important, both on the policy side as well as on the execution side.
Data is becoming an asset class. How do you think countries and companies should approach data sharing, data monetization, and data protection without slowing innovation? And here, when we talk about data protection, we can also touch upon data privacy and cybersecurity as well.
Yeah. I think for us, and I think Danielle correctly mentioned, data is at its foundation the most important thing. And I use the words crap in, crap out. If you use not good data that is not clean and that is wrong, and maybe in some cases unstructured the right way, and you do analysis on it, then you'll get the bad results. So what we do is a few things. The first is, in addition to just the quality of data, is also what we call data sovereignty. Nowadays, I would say this is the new rage after AI in 2024 and Gen AI in 2025. And the fact of the matter is, we need to balance between all these different dimensions, whether it's the speed of innovation, whether it's accessibility, whether it's sovereignty. Because as much as we want to talk about sovereignty in each country, having their own data center, data repository, some countries cannot do that because they are still in the process of ensuring that their citizens have the right power, and whatnot. So could there be a world or a design where sovereignty is not looked at it from a per country level, but more from a cluster or regional perspective, where a few governments, a few regions actually work together to build a common framework, common infrastructure that is needed. And then the last thing I'll say in terms of this data point is also the unstructured and structured nature of the data. As Danielle quite rightly mentioned, data is everywhere among us today. There are a lot of data in our CRM system. For those of you who have mobile phones, which I assume is everyone in the room, there's location-based data being tracked on a constant basis, a ping to your phone. But there's also a bunch of unstructured data as well. So the idea is, how does this all bundle together, used in a coherent way, both balancing the privacy aspect part of it, as well as the regulatory part of it, to generate the insights to really support the citizens and the countries of which we operate in.
Back to you, Professor. The robots and avatars, do you think they should have autonomous roles in decision-making, or they should always remain tools for humans?
I think in Japan, probably Japan has the different idea from other countries, right? So the robots and avatars from the beginning, so they are our friend, right? So we never distinguish the robot and the humans. We are living together. This is the Japanese ideas. But probably you may have different ideas, right? So human layers and robot layers, robot will support the humans. So in such case, you may use the robot as tools But as a Japanese, right? So this is a kind of tradition. This is our cultures, right? So we never distinguish the human and the others, right? Human and the robots, and then we are working together. We are helping each other. So that is the Japanese mind, right? But both ways is possible, right? Of course, the robot is going to be a very useful tools, but in the future, if we improve the AI functions, I really think robot is going to be our friend, right? So we're going to support each other. So that is my vision.
And you're transferring this, are you transferring this technology and sharing this knowledge with other countries other than Japan and UAE?
Yeah, of course, that is a very, very important thing, right?
Yeah.
So we are living together, right? We need to share the technologies, data, everything.
Okay. Daniela, back to you. Since we are in the Knowledge Summit and universities are the core of knowledge, let's talk about university rankings. There's a huge weight on publishing regarding to university rankings. And sometimes it gets in the way or it's at the expense of teaching. What do you think of the way universities worldwide are ranked? Do you think there should be too much weight on publishing or there should be another way of measuring?
Yeah, that has been a criticism of mine of university rankings for quite a few years now, because you do not have a ranking of the best country, right? That does not exist. You have to look at some particular phenomenon. Already for knowledge, we have 115 indicators. Imagine for the best country what we would need to assess. So we have indices on competitiveness, on skills, on different things. And I think that the big problem with university rankings is that they try to just say, this is the best university. We need them to move beyond that, I think, because it has biased the entire industry of knowledge. And coming from an emerging country, I come from Chile, it has been terrible. I see all my colleagues who are academics, it's publish or perish. And that's the mandate, and that's what the university needs to actually improve its ranking. So I would say that what we need is that these rankings move into, I don't know, technical training, humanities, and not just a focus on STEMs, professorship, linkages of universities. That's very important with industry, with society, and with governments. And the good news is that that is happening. I've seen that happening. I mean, there is, for example, the THE and QS have sustainability rankings. They have been moving away from STEM. It is happening, but my impression is that universities haven't noticed yet.
And this would be a good measure for university rankings, in your
I
opinion?
think it would be very good news for quite a few of our countries. You know, I mean, here we have the doctor is an expert in research and prototype development. We cannot afford to have that in many of our countries.
What
we
is
do
your
not have the
take on this,
capabilities. So,
Professor?
you know, how can we actually compete with Japan or with the Osaka University if that's the main measure? We just can't. And I think that the problem is not really what is being measured. It's fine that they measure this. They should continue having these rankings, but maybe a few additional ones in which we can see if, based on the priorities we have from the policy side, if we're getting these responses from the universities and research institutes.
Yeah. What's your take on this, Professor? What's your take, your point of view on what she said about university rankings and the way they're being measured?
My university always focusing on the engineering and science, right? So that recently we got a Nobel Award from my university, right? So they're focusing on the medical, the science, and just science, right? So, but after this, I think we need to focus on the more social science and the philosophies, right? So we need to have that kind of the very fundamental things, and it's going to be important for the scientists and the engineers, right? So we need to care about that. But currently, we are mainly focused on the engineering and the science.
Mr. Lung, back to you. How critical is having ultra-fast connectivity to the fundamental structure of modern knowledge markets?
All things being equal is super important. In my last response, I talked about sort of the financial aspect of it, but if we take that sort of aside for a second, ultra-fast connectivity would allow for a much number of different use cases and mediums to be used. And I'll give you, again, a few examples, because I'm a example guy, less theoretical. One is, with ultra-fast connectivity, you can do remote surgery. And we had talked about university, teaching. One big part of it is you have a lot of good doctors, specialists in all parts of the world. With ultra-fast connectivity, they don't need to travel to see their patients. They can do things like remote surgery, right? Using the expertise with the physical avatar and the robotic hands to actually operate on the patient in need. Without ultra-fast connectivity, this is not possible. Or with intermittent connectivity, you probably don't want it, right? I think the second thing is, on a sort of a lighter note, ultra-fast connectivity would allow for different medium and platforms to be used. An example of that is just in the world of learning. If you have okay connectivity, it will be text-based. If you have somewhat slightly better, it might be images and video. With things like ultra-fast connectivity, you can have such immersive experiences in learning, using technologies like AR and VR to really embed yourself, right, in that particular experience. So for example, if you're learning about the rainforest in Brazil, you can read about it in a book. But what if you could wear an AR headset and actually be in the rainforest, feel the dew of the water on your face, paddle in that canoe down the Amazon River? That level of experiential learning would not be possible unless you have ultra-fast connectivity.
So we have to end the session. The time is up. But before ending the session, I would like to hear from each of you a small message being here in the Knowledge Summit. What message would you intend to share with the public? I'll start with you, Daniela.
Okay, this
Ladies
is a
first.
message and an invitation. Well, I think the main thing for all this is purpose. And I think it was a huge development for GKI to focus for the last pillar on ESG, ESG impact, ESG performance. And I invite you all to a session tomorrow at 2 p.m. where we will be covering that in particular.
Okay. Mr. Lang?
My single one message is about collaborating within the ecosystem, because no one organization or company can do it alone. This could mean public-private partnerships. It could mean different technology companies working together. So I think in the overall agenda of knowledge sustainability, collaboration is key.
Professor Hiroshi?
Yeah, so after this, we're going to use the more complicated AI system and robot system, but that consists of many, many components. And then, at the same time, we need to have the social studies about that. Right? We need to share the technologies. We need to share the basic concept, the very important ideas about how to use AI and robots. But we need to create our futures by ourselves.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed having this discussion with you and sharing this knowledge, each to his own field. Thank you very much for being here today. And I wish everyone a very nice evening. And of course, tomorrow is the last day of the Knowledge Summit. We all invite you to come. There will be a lot of interesting sessions as well to attend. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.